The United States and Iran were not always enemies. In fact, for many years, they shared a reasonably warm and cooperative relationship. America was seen by many Iranians as a different kind of power, unlike the British and Russians who had long interfered in their country's affairs. This perception began to change dramatically in the middle of the 20th century, primarily over one precious resource: oil. Iran's vast oil wealth had been controlled for decades by a British company, which gave Iran only a small fraction of the profits. This arrangement was deeply unpopular among the Iranian people, who felt their national treasure was being stolen from them, leaving the country impoverished while others grew rich. The situation came to a head in 1951, when Iran elected a new prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. He was a hugely popular nationalist leader who promised to take back control of Iran's oil for the benefit of its people. He successfully nationalized the oil industry, an act that was celebrated across Iran but viewed with alarm in London and Washington. The British government, furious at the loss of its most valuable foreign asset, organized a crippling boycott of Iranian oil. They sought help from the United States, warning that Mossadegh was pushing Iran towards communism, a significant fear during the Cold War era. This argument eventually convinced the American government to take action against a democratically elected leader. In 1953, the American Central Intelligence Agency, alongside British intelligence, orchestrated a coup d'etat known as Operation Ajax. This secret operation successfully overthrew Prime Minister Mossadegh and his government. In his place, the United States and Britain restored full power to the monarch, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The Shah quickly signed away control of Iran's oil again, this time to a consortium of Western companies, with American firms getting a significant share. For the United States, the operation was a success. It had secured oil interests and, in its view, prevented a potential Soviet ally from emerging in a critical region. For Iranians, however, the 1953 coup was a catastrophic betrayal that planted deep and lasting seeds of resentment toward the United States. They had watched their popular democratic government be destroyed by a foreign power simply for wanting to control its own resources. The Shah, now firmly back on his throne, with American support, began to rule with an increasingly authoritarian hand. He established a feared secret police force, SAVAK, which was known for imprisoning, torturing, and killing political opponents. While the Shah modernized parts of Iran, his regime was seen by many as a corrupt puppet of the United States, and the anger against both him and his American backers quietly grew stronger year after year. For the next quarter of a century, the Shah's government remained a close and essential ally of the United States in the Middle East. He bought billions of dollars worth of American weapons, and served as a pillar of stability against Soviet influence. However, beneath the surface of this strategic alliance, popular opposition within Iran was reaching a boiling point. The deep anger over the 1953 coup had never faded, and it was now combined with fury at the Shah's oppressive rule, his lavish spending, and his embrace of Western culture, which many conservative Iranians saw as a corrupting influence. This discontent found a powerful voice in an exiled cleric, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. From his exile, first in Iraq and then in France, Ayatollah Khomeini sent cassette tapes of his sermons into Iran, denouncing the Shah as an illegitimate tyrant and calling the United States the Great Satan. He accused America of plundering Iran's wealth and undermining its Islamic values. His message resonated deeply with millions of Iranians, from religious conservatives to students and the urban poor. By late 1978, massive protests and strikes had paralyzed the country. In January 1979, the Shah, weakened by illness and unable to control the streets, fled Iran for the last time. 2 weeks later, Khomeini returned to a hero's welcome, and the Islamic Revolution had triumphed. The revolution fundamentally transformed Iran from a pro-Western monarchy into an anti-American Islamic republic. The new government's leaders were deeply suspicious of the United States, believing it would try to repeat the events of 1953 and overthrow their new regime to reinstall the Shah. This fear intensified when President Jimmy Carter allowed the exiled and ailing Shah to enter the United States for medical treatment in October 1979. Many Iranians saw this as a pretext for plotting a counter-revolution. The decision proved to be a fateful one, triggering a crisis that would define the United States-Iran relationship for decades to come, poisoning it with a unique level of bitterness. On November 4, 1979, a group of radical Iranian students, followers of Ayatollah Khomeini, stormed the United States Embassy in Tehran, They overwhelmed the Marine Guards and seized the building, taking 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. The students demanded the return of the Shah to Iran to face trial, along with the return of the wealth he had allegedly stolen. The hostage crisis lasted for 444 agonizing days, with images of blindfolded Americans broadcast around the world. It severed diplomatic relations between the two countries completely and cemented an image in the American mind of Iran as a dangerous and hostile nation, a perception that remains powerful to this day. The deep-seated animosity created by the revolution and hostage crisis shaped the events of the following decade. In September 1980, the neighboring country of Iraq, led by its dictator Saddam Hussein, invaded Iran. This marked the beginning of the brutal Iran-Iraq War, a conflict that would last for 8 long years and result in the deaths of over 1 million people. Saddam Hussein had hoped for a swift victory against a revolutionary government he believed was in chaos, but the Iranian people rallied to defend their nation with immense ferocity. The war became a grinding, bloody stalemate, with both sides suffering horrific casualties in trench warfare, reminiscent of the First World War. During this devastating conflict, the United States made a strategic decision to support Iraq. Although Saddam Hussein was a brutal dictator, the American government viewed Ayatollah Khomeini's revolutionary Iran as the greater threat to its interests in the Middle East. The United States provided Saddam's regime with intelligence, economic aid, and military support, even as it became public knowledge that Iraq was using chemical weapons such as mustard gas against Iranian soldiers and civilians. For Iranians, America's support for the aggressor who had invaded their country was further proof of its unending hostility. It reinforced the belief that the Great Satan would do anything to see their revolution fail. The war also led to direct, albeit limited, military confrontations in the Persian Gulf. As part of its war effort, Iran began attacking oil tankers from Kuwait and other Gulf states that were supporting Iraq. In response, the United States Navy started escorting these tankers to ensure the flow of oil. This tanker war created a tense and dangerous environment in the crowded waters of the Gulf. Skirmishes broke out between American forces and the Iranian Navy, bringing the two nations close to a wider conflict. The tension was palpable, as each side viewed the other's military presence in the region as a direct and provocative threat to its own security and national interests. This volatile situation culminated in a terrible tragedy on July 3, 1988. The American naval cruiser, the USS Vincennes, shot down an Iranian civilian airliner, Iran Air Flight 655, over the Persian Gulf. All 290 people on board, including 66 children, were killed. The United States government stated that the warship had mistakenly identified the passenger jet as an attacking F-14 fighter jet, calling it a tragic accident. However, for Iranians, the act was seen as a deliberate and barbaric attack on innocent civilians, an unforgivable act of aggression. To them, it confirmed that America was a ruthless enemy, and the incident remains a source of profound anger and sorrow in Iran. After the traumas of the 1980s, the rivalry between the United States and Iran entered a new and honestly even more dangerous phase, centered on Iran's nuclear ambitions. In 2002, an Iranian opposition group revealed that the country was secretly building nuclear facilities, including a uranium enrichment plant at Natanz. This discovery, well, it really sparked international alarm. The United States, under President George W. Bush, accused Iran of pursuing a secret program to build nuclear weapons. In a famous speech, President Bush labeled Iran as part of an axis of evil, alongside Iraq and North Korea, cementing its status as a primary adversary in American foreign policy, and increasing tensions dramatically. Throughout the 2000s, the nuclear issue dominated the relationship. The United States and its allies imposed increasingly strict economic sanctions on Iran to pressure it into halting its uranium enrichment activities. Iran, however, insisted that its program was purely for peaceful purposes, such as generating electricity, and refused to back down. The standoff escalated beyond just words and sanctions. In 2010, a sophisticated computer virus known as Stuxnet, widely believed to be a joint American-Israeli cyber weapon, was used to sabotage thousands of centrifuges at the Natanz facility. This act of cyber warfare demonstrated a new front in the ongoing conflict between the two nations. The relentless pressure of sanctions which crippled Iran's economy eventually brought the country to the negotiating table. Under the more diplomatic approach of President Barack Obama, years of tense negotiations between Iran and 6 world powers, including the United States, finally produced a breakthrough. In 2015, they signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal. Under this historic agreement, Iran agreed to severely limit its nuclear program and allow intrusive international inspections. In return, the crippling international sanctions that had been imposed on it were lifted, offering a glimmer of hope for a less confrontational future. This fragile peace, however, did not last long. In 2018, President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew the United States from the JCPOA, calling it a terrible deal. He reimposed and expanded the sanctions on Iran as part of a maximum pressure campaign designed to force Iran into a new agreement. This decision shattered the diplomatic progress that had been made. In response to the renewed sanctions and the collapse of the deal, Iran began to restart its suspended nuclear activities. It started enriching uranium to higher levels, moving closer and closer to the point where it could potentially develop a nuclear weapon, setting the stage for an even more perilous confrontation. The collapse of the nuclear deal plunged U.S.-Iran relations into a new spiral of direct confrontation. The maximum pressure campaign from Washington was met with maximum resistance from Tehran. Tensions reached a breaking point in January 2020 when the United States carried out a drone strike in Iraq that assassinated General Qassem Soleimani. Soleimani was not just any general, he was the most powerful and revered military commander in Iran, responsible for its foreign military operations and a figure of immense national pride. His killing was seen in Washington as taking a dangerous terrorist off the battlefield, but in Iran, it was viewed as an act of war against the state itself. Iran retaliated by launching a barrage of ballistic missiles at U.S. military bases in Iraq, injuring more than 100 American soldiers. The two countries came closer to all-out war than at any time in decades. Although both sides eventually stepped back from the brink, the underlying conflict continued to simmer. Iran accelerated its nuclear program, while its proxy militias in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen continued to harass U.S. forces. The rivalry became a shadow war fought across the region, punctuated by naval standoffs in the Persian Gulf and periodic attacks that kept the entire Middle East on edge, waiting for the next major escalation to erupt. The situation worsened through the early 2020s. Amidst an intensifying conflict between Iran and Israel, Iran began launching advanced missiles towards Israeli cities. The United States, concerned that Iran's nuclear program had reached a critical threshold where a bomb could be developed in weeks, decided to take drastic action. On June 22, 2025, President Trump authorized Operation Midnight Hammer, a massive U.S. military air assault on Iran's primary nuclear facilities. Using stealth bombers and powerful bunker-buster bombs, the strikes targeted sites at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan in an attempt to obliterate Iran's nuclear infrastructure and set its capabilities back by years. The 2025 bombing marked the first direct, large-scale U.S. military attack on Iranian soil, a red line that had never been crossed before. Iran's leaders vowed a severe and proportionate response while the world watched in fear. Global oil prices surged and the United Nations Security Council held an emergency session as condemnations from China and Russia clashed with cautious support from some Western allies. This open conflict is the culmination of over 70 years of mistrust, from the 1953 coup to the 1979 revolution and beyond. The cycle of grievance and retaliation has left both nations locked in a dangerous rivalry, one that now threatens not just regional stability but global peace and security.